Folks, let me tell you something. The Supreme Court of the United States, the highest court in the land, 9 of the finest legal minds America's law schools could produce, just looked at the 14th Amendment, looked at the plain English of it, looked at what the founders intended, and decided that the children of people who snuck across our border illegally are automatically, instantly, no questions asked, American citizens. 6-3. 6 justices signed on to that, put their names on it. Now, I have in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers the reaction from President Donald J. Trump, who called this ruling, and I want to read this precisely because I think the precision matters. He called it absolutely insane. And you know what? He's right. He is 100% correct, and he's going back to the court. He is asking for a rehearing. And my friends, buckle up, because we are about to spend the next several weeks watching the drive-by media explain to us with great academic solemnity why letting the entire world's maternity wards relocate to American soil is actually the genius of the Founding Fathers made manifest. I cannot wait. I genuinely cannot wait. I'm Rick LeBeau. This is Rush Hour, and we are just getting started. All right, my friends, let's get into this birthright citizenship ruling, because I think most people, most hardworking, common-sense Americans who are sitting in their cars right now, most of you already know in your gut that something here is deeply wrong, and you just want somebody to tell you you're not crazy. You are not crazy. Let me lay this out for you. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, the purpose, the sole purpose, the only reason it existed, was to make formerly enslaved people full citizens of the United States. The country had just fought a war over it. More than 600,000 Americans died. And after all of that, after Appomattox, after the 13th Amendment, Congress looked around and said, we need to make absolutely sure that these men and women are citizens, that no state can strip that from them. And they wrote the 14th Amendment. That is the history. That is the purpose. That is the context. Now, fast forward to 2026, and the legal establishment, the people in the nice robes, the people with the lifetime appointments, the people who park in the reserved spots, they have taken that amendment, that very specific, very historically grounded provision, and they have stretched it like taffy until it covers something nobody in 1868 could have imagined in their wildest fever dreams: the automatic citizenship of the children of illegal aliens. People who are here in violation of American law. People who, by definition, are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States in the constitutional sense, because that phrase is right there in the amendment. Right there, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That was the limiting clause. That was the qualifier. And for decades, the courts have just waved at it, smiled politely, and moved on. The phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and for those of you in Rio Linda, that means basically owing your allegiance to the United States. That phrase was understood by everyone who wrote it to exclude foreign nationals. The senators who debated it said so explicitly. Senator Lyman Trumbull, who was one of the principal authors, said on the Senate floor that subject to the jurisdiction meant not owing allegiance to any other country. He said that. It is in the congressional record. It is not a secret. But the Supreme Court, 6 of them, apparently did not find that persuasive. Now here is where I want to slow down, because this is important. The ruling was 6-3. That means some of the justices Trump put on the court went with the majority. And I want to be careful here because I do not have the full breakdown in front of me. But that is a gut punch regardless. That is the kind of thing that makes you want to drive home a different route and go in through the back door so the neighbors don't ask how you're doing. Trump called it insane. He is going to request a rehearing. Now, rehearings, for those keeping score at home, are rare. The court doesn't often grant them, but the fact that he is going back, the fact that he is not accepting this, the fact that he is fighting, that matters. Because this is not just about immigration policy. This is about whether the American people get to decide who is an American. Think about what we are actually saying when we say birthright citizenship applies to everyone born on American soil, regardless of the status of their parents. What we are saying is, the border doesn't fully exist. You can violate it, and your child becomes a citizen, and then that child becomes an anchor. That's literally what they're called. Anchor babies. And I know the media hates that term, which is exactly why I'll keep using it. And that anchor then allows the rest of the family to eventually stay. This is not a feature of almost any other developed country on Earth. Canada has it. That's about it among the wealthy nations. Germany doesn't, France doesn't, Japan certainly doesn't, the United Kingdom doesn't. Most of Europe does not have automatic birthright citizenship for the children of illegal immigrants. They looked at this and said, no, that's not how nationhood works. But here in the United States, we've decided we're going to be the most generous nation in human history. So generous, in fact, that people who break our laws get to give their children our citizenship as a reward for breaking those laws. And we're going to call that the law of the land. And if you disagree with it, you're a bigot. I've been doing this program for a long time, my friends. I have seen a lot, and I still find this stuff remarkable. In the most literal sense of the word, it is worthy of remark. Here is the extended problem, and I want you to really sit with this for a second, because it goes beyond any one family, any one case. What this ruling effectively does is take the question of American citizenship and hand it to geography. You happen to be born on a particular piece of dirt? Congratulations, you're one of us. Not because your parents had any connection to this country, not because anyone swore an oath, not because any civic commitment was made, because of geography, because your mother was inside a certain set of lines when you arrived. Now, compare that to what it used to mean to be an American, what it was supposed to mean. You came here, you came legally, you learned the language, you embraced the culture, you took the oath, you raised your right hand and you said, I am renouncing my prior allegiances, and I am pledging myself to this republic. That is citizenship. That is a covenant. That is something with weight and substance and meaning. What the court has now reaffirmed is that citizenship can be acquired by accident, by timing, by a successful border crossing. And look, I know some of you are saying, Rick, what about the kids? They didn't choose this. They didn't do anything wrong. And you're right, they didn't. Nobody is arguing that the children are villains, but we cannot design national policy around the idea that because someone is innocent, all downstream consequences of the illegal act that brought them here must be nullified. That is not a legal principle. That is a feelings principle. And feelings principles make terrible law. Trump is going back to the court. He should. And here is what I'd like to see. And I say this as a man who, with half my brain tied behind my back, just to make it fair, has been ahead of this conversation for years. I'd like to see this court actually reckon with the text, the actual text. What does subject to the jurisdiction thereof mean? Not what we've assumed it means for 60 years. What did the people who wrote it say it meant in the very debates where they wrote it? Because if you do that, if you do the actual historical work, the answer becomes a lot less absolutely insane and a lot more, wait, Trump might have a point. Don't doubt me. Okay, folks, let's spin through a few more items from today because there is no shortage of material. And the all-knowing, all-sensing, all-seeing Maha Ricky has got the stack right here. First up, Spain. Beautiful country, great food, lovely people, pathetically inadequate defense spending for a NATO member in a world where Russia is fighting land wars in Europe. For years, Spain has been coasting, spending about 1% of its GDP on defense, while the American taxpayer is footing the bill for European security and the Spanish government is busy funding bullfighting subsidies or whatever else they do over there. And every time an American president has said, "Hey, can you guys maybe contribute a little more?" Spain has done what European countries do, which is lecture us about our tone. Not this time. Trump ordered a trade embargo. He actually did it, not a threat, not a strongly worded letter. He said, no more trade, and he meant it. And Spain, Spain came back all the way, as the president put it, aboard Air Force One. They agreed to boost their NATO payments. This is what strength looks like, my friends. This is not complicated. You don't get respect from people who think you're bluffing by continuing to bluff. You get respect by not bluffing. The NATO summit in Ankara apparently went quite well. There was, I am told, tremendous love in that room, which I find both entertaining and instructive, because these same European leaders who spent 4 years telling their domestic audiences that Trump was a dangerous lunatic somehow managed to find quite a bit of warmth for him when he was the one holding the cards. Funny how that works. Almost like they knew all along that the man had a point, and they were just hoping they wouldn't have to admit it. The lesson here is simple. Other countries, just like anybody else, will do what they think they can get away with. Stop letting them get away with it. The Trump doctrine, whatever you want to call it, is getting results that decades of polite diplomatic failure could not. Next, J.D. Vance has launched a full investigation into the H-1B visa program. Now, this is a story that has been bubbling for years, and the drive-by media has almost entirely ignored it because it involves a constituency they like, big tech, doing something that hurts a constituency they claim to care about, American workers. Here is the short version for those of you who are newer to this issue. The H-1B program was created to bring in foreign workers with specialized skills that supposedly couldn't be found domestically. That was the premise. The reality, as it has evolved over 30 years, is that companies, many of them big tech firms, have used the program as a mechanism to replace American workers with cheaper foreign labor. You fire the American, you hire someone on an H-1B who will work for less and who, because their visa is tied to their employer, basically cannot complain or leave without risking deportation. It is, and I want to be precise here, it is a racket. It is legal, federally sanctioned, politically protected, and it has pushed American graduates out of jobs in their own fields. Vance is going after it. About time. I have been saying this for years. You cannot stand up at a podium and talk about the American worker and then sign off on a visa program that directly undercuts the American worker. Those two things do not coexist. I am glad somebody in the administration is taking this seriously, and I say this while fully acknowledging that this puts Vance on a collision course with some very powerful, very wealthy, very influential voices in Silicon Valley who would prefer this particular conversation not happen. It's going to be a battle. Good. And finally, the main Senate race situation, which is, I have to be honest with you, one of the more richly comic political disasters I have witnessed in some time. The Democrats had their candidate, a fellow named Graham Plattner, who won the primary and was supposed to challenge Susan Collins for her Senate seat. And then, as tends to happen in these situations, some rather serious allegations came out. Sexual assault allegations. And scores of Maine Democrats called on him to step down. And after some very dramatic, emotional carry-on, apparently there was an 11-minute video. 11 minutes, my friends. He suspended his campaign. Now the Democrats are scrambling. They floated the name Patrick Dempsey, the actor, Dr. McDreamy himself, from Grey's Anatomy, and Dempsey said no, he is not running, which I think shows good judgment on his part, though for different reasons than he probably has. They were actually floating McDreamy, folks. This is the state of the Democratic Party. They lose their candidate to scandal, and the immediate brainstorm session produces a television doctor. This is the party that wants to run the country. The party of expertise and nuance, and we have a plan. Their plan for the main Senate race is apparently to see if any beloved fictional characters are available. Republicans are breathing easier tonight. The Senate majority just got a little more secure, and somewhere, Susan Collins is sleeping very well. My friends, before we go, let me leave you with this. What we talked about today, the Birthright ruling, the Spain situation, the H-1B investigation, all of it points to the same fault line that runs through every major political argument in this country right now. And that is the question of whether the United States is going to be a nation or whether it is going to be a set of very attractive coordinates on a map that anyone can access and immediately start drawing benefits from. A nation has a border. A nation has citizens, and citizenship means something. A nation has workers it is responsible to protect. A nation has allies it is permitted to hold accountable. These are not radical ideas. These are the basic definitions of the word. And yet here we are, in the year of our Lord, 2026, and stating these things plainly gets you called all manner of names by people on television who make more money than you and have never had to compete for a job in their lives. The American people are adults. You know this. You know what a country is. You know what a border means. You know what it costs when your government imports cheap labor to replace you. You know what it costs when your allies don't pay their share. You know all of this not because you took a graduate seminar, but because you live in the real world, where decisions have consequences and math is not optional. And that is why, at the end of every day, I come back to the same conclusion I came to when I started doing this. The American people are the only adults left in the room. And my job, my privilege, my honor, is to sit here at this golden EIP microphone and tell you that you are not wrong for knowing what you know. Don't let them gaslight you. Don't let them tell you the obvious thing is complicated. It is not that complicated. Common sense has been declared illegal by the elite, but it cannot be repealed. I'm Rick LeBeau. This has been Rush Hour. Same time tomorrow if they let us back on.